We welcome our viewing church family today. Thank you for joining us online on this last Sunday of December of 2020. We are glad that we can be here to worship, and we invite you to worship with us. And we're going to invite you to sing along with us before we open the Word today. So let's sing again, just one more time, just offer our praise. Jesus, Jesus, there's something about that name. Sing it with us, you that are online, as you join us this week. Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms will all pass away. Something about that name. And the church said, Amen. Amen. This morning I invite you to turn with me to Matthew's Gospel. Matthew is the first of the four Gospels. Some theologians do not consider John as one of the Gospels. If you studied Synoptic Gospels in college, as some of us did, it's okay with me whether you include it or not, because John wrote later, and John wrote about all 3 years of Jesus' life. Matthew, Mark, and Luke wrote about the last year of his life. So John was he was a follower and secondhand writer and wrote from eyewitness accounts, and we know that John wrote 5 books. So that's just a little background, simply to point out that, again, just let me clarify it and pinpoint it. When you think of Jesus and the Christmas story, Matthew is very concerned, obviously, with the genealogy of Jesus, that he's a true Jew. So he takes great lengths and great pain to list 42 genealogies of Jesus. He breaks them down into 314 genealogy groups to trace him back to Abraham, that he is a Jew of Jews. Mark just jumps right into the adult life. Luke, a Gentile and a physician, what does he talk about? Birth. Mary being pregnant, and Elizabeth getting pregnant, and the birth and the pains and the traveling and all that goes with that. Now, John summates it very quickly, and he comes right to the point. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld His glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John said, you guys have already written all that stuff, so I'm going to deal with it right now. The Word became flesh. That's all we need to know. The incarnate God became one of us. Now, having said all of that, back in Matthew chapter 2, after all these genealogies and the narrative about the birth, Matthew breaks in and he tells us, and I'm reading from the Message Bible because I love the classification that the Message Bible uses in introducing the story of what we call the wise men. I must warn you today, I'll give you a little upfront heads up, I'm going to dispel all the myths of the wise men. Now, some of you are going to be upset with me, especially those that are online, because they're going to have to take the nativity set and tear it all down. If they haven't already put it away, they're going to tear it all down and say, well, Pastor Dave said. Well, no, I want you to know what God said, not what Pastor Dave said. But we have lived with this childlike, as I've said several Sundays, Americanized, sanitized picture of Christmas. And it's not that at all. And here we see probably the most profound myth of the Christmas story as it surrounds what we call the wise men. So Matthew introduces this section by calling this the scholars from the East. I like that. The scholars from the East. And in his story, as he begins to elucidate here, or refer, and begin to enumerate about who they are and where they came and how they got there, we break into his story with the following, beginning at verse 7. Herod then arranged a secret meeting with the scholars from the East. Pretending to be as devout as they were, he got them to tell him exactly when the birth announcement star appeared. Then he told them the prophecy about Bethlehem. Now, we'll pick up on that, but we know that Herod obviously would not have known anything about Bethlehem, so he had to call in his wise men, and when they came and said, where is he that is born King of the Jews? Well, Herod said, I have no clue what you're talking about, but I'll get my wise guys in here, my biblical scholars, my seminarians, and they'll tell me where it's found. He didn't know, but they knew because they'd studied Jewish history. They knew Micah 5:2, O Bethlehem, Judah, out of you shall come he who shall rule my people. So they knew it was Bethlehem, and they made that clear. And he said to them, well, go and find this child, leave no stone unturned. As soon as you find him, send me word, and I'll join you at once in your worship. Well, I know this will upset probably a few people, but all I can think of is this little saying we used to hear as children, liar, liar, pants on fire. He's lying. He has no intention to go and worship this king. That when he hears the word king, he is so into himself, and we'll see that in a couple moments. But he is so insecure that to hear the word king, he is threatened, and he's trying to cover his tracks. So go find him and tell, so I can come and worship him. Really? Well, why is it 2 verses later you're declaring to go kill all babies, male babies under 2 years of age? It doesn't sound to me like you're going to worship him. Now, okay, truth be told, this is just a little parenthetical aside. He would fit well in Washington, D.C. Need I say more? Okay. Then the star appeared again, the same star they had seen in the eastern skies. It led them on till it hovered over the place of the child. That word is used twice. We'll pick up on that. Notice it does not say baby. It says child. They could hardly contain themselves. They were in the right place. They had arrived at the right time. So on the bottom of my page, I wrote this little statement. In the right place at the right time. That's where God has us today. In the right place at the right time. So let's break down a couple of the myths, okay? It's going to mess up your nativity story, but it's okay. Because I want you to see, what I want us to see today is the magnanimous and overwhelming price and sacrifice that was paid for this group to come and bow down to the Christ child. So let's break down at least 3 myths about Christmas. First of all, there were not 3. Secondly, they were not wise men riding camels. And third, they didn't come from next door. Okay? We got that much covered. Reality is, biblical historians suggest that they traveled most likely about 800 miles to get to Jesus. Now, I did not check my GPS, my geographical positioning mileage, but I would suggest that at the very least, they would have been coming from Boston to Washington, or let's say Easton. More than likely, they would have been coming from Portland, Maine to Easton. And that's not quite 800 miles. But I'm simply wanting you to see that they didn't come from next door. This was a long journey. Biblical historians suggest, and by the way, break down the myth of camels. They did not ride camels. They were riding Arabian steeds. They were coming from the most powerful country of that day with the best of animals. The Arabian horses which they rode were the best that could be obtained anywhere. So the average, again, grading it out, just estimating that the average journey they could make daily would be a maximum of 20 miles, and probably less than that. On some days they could do 20, on other days in the hills and the mountains, coming south as they were southwest from way up north, 800 miles away to come to Bethlehem, they might have averaged 15 miles a day. So it could have been anywhere from 2 months to 6 months that they were traveling. Now, let's break down the other myth. There were not three. Again, some biblical historians suggest that this entourage made up a party or a traveling entourage as high as 1,000 people. At the very least, there were 500. The reason is you go back and look at history and how many each of them required to care for him. Someone had to care for the animals, they had to have chefs, they had to have servants, they had to have food, they had to have supplies. So this entourage that's traveling is not some little RV loaded up with 3 guys. Got me? So far, I haven't seen any stones being thrown yet, but so you'll forgive me. I'm just wanting you to understand as simply as we can that this story is bigger than we've ever allowed it to become. This isn't some cutesy little American, put 3 camels and these guys kneeling at the manger, because they never knelt at the manger. So they came on a journey anywhere from 6 months, 4 months, whatever it may have been, through every kind of weather you could imagine, through terrain that was almost impossible to travel. They were guided by one simple means, their GPS. Do you travel with one? I see a head back to my left. I'll make no reference to who it is, but yesterday when I was at her adopted father's home, and which is her Auntie Lane and Uncle Harry, she was in her car for an hour trying to fix something on her GPS or some kind of electronic thing that if she'd have asked me, I could have done it in 2 minutes, but she didn't want my advice, so it's okay, Jules, that's your problem. No. They had their own GPS, God positioning system. It took me a long time to think that up. And the only thing you're going to remember from this message is Pastor Dave, in his simple little mind, got up there and talked about a God positioning system. You won't remember who it was for, where they were going, how it was used, but you'll remember that phrase. No, that's how they traveled. They traveled by again, remember, these men were astronomers. They were magi. That we don't like to believe this, but technically they were magicians, from which we get magi. Now, they weren't magicians as we know them today, shysters, but that was their trade. That was why they followed the star. That's why God led them with a star. It was the supernova of God. Now, I want to make something very clear. The Hebrew word here is a word that simply amplified means the Shekinah glory of God. What led them to the light of the world was the Shekinah glory of God Himself. The light led them with light. to find the light. I don't know if you're feeling what I'm trying to get through to you, but what I'm trying to say to you is that same God is in control of your life. He's in charge of your life. He orders your steps. Instead of looking to the world or a relative or somebody to gossip with you or get off of the internet and go to the light to find out where the light is, because it's right here in the book of light. He'll guide you if you ask Him. Our steps are ordered by the Lord, and we delight in His way. Again, we've made this so childlike and childish that we've taken the miracle out of what happened on that beautiful occasion. Now let's jump streams a little bit. They arrive in Bethlehem. They show up at the palace. Well, now here again, ask yourself a question. If you're looking for a king, where would you go? The drugstore? Giant? Wawa? The local market? No. You'd go where the king lives. They just know a star is going to lead, that they've been told. Follow the star, it'll lead you to the king. So they go to Herod. Now, humanly, because of what he did, it sounds like God might have been confused, and he got the plan all messed up, because the results of their coming to Herod were not really positive. The outcome was not real good. It ended up in the murder of probably 3 to 4 dozen little infant sons under the age of 2. We just crossed the mark of, 200,000 plus that have died of COVID. But somehow we are oblivious to the fact that 3,000 little babies are being murdered every day in America. Are those lives any less precious to God? Absolutely not. But we can create panic and fear, and I'm not belittling COVID or a pandemic or death by COVID or anything, but I'm saying to you, I think we've got our priorities mixed up here. The most precious of God's creation, even in the womb, before they're able to see the light of day, are snuffed out simply because they're an inconvenience to somebody. God help us, because their blood is on our hands. So they go to Herod, and Herod says, well, go find, calls his wise sages in, and they tell them, and he says, you go and find him and bring me word again, because I want to come and worship him. Now, understand something about this man. This is one of the most evil, wicked men in biblical history. Let me just give you one statement that'll underscore that or affirm that. He killed his wife and 2 of his sons because they threatened his kingdom. And what was the decree that he gave out? Go and search for him. And when he found out, what age? See, he did his homework. You understand? He did his homework. He wasn't looking for a baby. That's, again, I'm sorry to break down your misconception or our preconceived conceptions, but Jesus is no longer a little baby. He's about 18 months old, living with Joseph and Mary in a house. Now, Herod found that out because his decree was, go and kill all male babies 2 years of age and under. If Jesus had been 3 months old or whatever, he would have decreed that. It was no problem for him. He had so many killed, it was just one more little takeout of a 3 or 4 or 5 dozen male children in a little town. Because among them, he figured, according to what had been told him, one of them was going to become king, and nobody was king but Herod. one of the most evil men of history. So they leave him. And what do? They go 6 miles to Bethlehem, right? Oh, by the way, how did they get there? GPS. Supernova, Shekinah glory. The star. This wasn't just a star. This was the Shekinah glory of God emanating from His Son, the newborn, soon to be about 2 years old now. Like I said, 18 months, somewhere in that area. But He is the Christ incarnate. He is God and man. His glory is Shekinah, is present at His birth. And it didn't go away when they moved to a little house somewhere in Bethlehem. Are you with me? So they're led. And they go. And they bring. And you know what they bring? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, I didn't give you an outline yet, so if you're outline takers and you're disappointed, here it is. Number one, the provisions from Persia. Provisions from Persia were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Let's just stop and wrap our minds around that a little bit. Think of these men, this entourage of 500 or maybe 1,000, traveling with gold out in the open. How long do you think that would have lasted? How many days before robbers would have killed them and taken the gold? They didn't have a Brinks truck, remember? You with me? So what does that tell us? That God's our protector. That God's our provider. When God sends you on a mission, He'll accomplish it. No matter what the opposition is. See, the gold had two purposes. One, symbolically, it represented the King of Kings. But more importantly, and at least of no lesser importance, is that they needed a Visa card with no max credit on it, so that they had to have provision when they were about to leave Bethlehem to go to Egypt to flee Herod. Joseph didn't have a job in Egypt. So they had to take a little 1.5 to maybe now a 2-year-old and go to a foreign country, and they had to eat and live and provide somewhere to rent or buy. So they had a Visa gold card. Oh. Some of you are looking at me like you don't believe me. You're a bunch of skeptics. Well, I'm just going to stick with my theory anyway. It does say gold. Didn't it say gold? Okay. They were probably richer than most of us. I don't have any gold. Do you have gold? I don't have any. Gold. It was provision and it was prophetic. Because gold represented His kingliness. The second thing is, they brought frankincense because the provision was for a priest who pardons. That's the second one. The priest who pardons. Frankincense represents His divinity. Gold represents His kingliness. Frankincense represents His divinity. He's the priest who pardons. And thirdly, they brought myrrh, which provides for the problems. In essence, what I'm saying is it prepares him for burial 32 years roughly later. It was symbolic of the fact that he was going to become the sacrificial Lamb of God. Do you catch that? See, all of that's wrapped up in this little cute little American, again, sanitized Christmas story that 3 guys came riding in on camels, by the way, dressed in regality with their conical hats on, showing that they are kings. And can you imagine riding like that for 600 miles, 800 miles? I don't think so. They came not to be seen, but to see. Not to receive, but to give. Now, what's the bottom line? That's pretty much the introduction. And we'll just do a wrap. What are you bringing to Jesus? There's only one thing that God needs from you. He doesn't need your money. He doesn't need your good works. He doesn't need your long-standing history in some denomination. He doesn't need your talent. There's only one thing God needs from you: your heart. Because He will never take it until you give it. God will never supersede or override your will. And He will only allow you to become one of His children, who becomes an heir and a joint heir with Jesus and has all the rights and privileges that He offers when you willingly do what these men did: bow down and worship. Give Him the best you can offer. With all your sin, all your problems, all of your frustrations, all of your past, and all of your future, just give it to Jesus. He'll take it, and He'll make a miracle out of it. Heavenly Father, what a privilege it is to be able to give back to God. For God so loved the world, He gave His only Son, that we may have life and have it more abundantly. This Christmas story becomes an everyday experience for all of us who name the name of Christ. May this new year begin with a covenant between you and us, Father, that we're going to give you our best every day and leave the results in God's hands. For that I thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for worship today. God bless you. Do be in prayer for Elaine and the family this week.